Your Name is about as mixed in terms of quality as you can get, with stellar highs and dreadful lows. Now, using math, these two put together should create an average movie, right? Well, that's what we're here to talk about. So here's why Your Name is a roller coaster of an experience. To start off, the animation in this movie is a pretty mixed bag. The Far Cry level trip scene has some strange looking animation that is honestly pretty disorienting, and the comment will go from looking absolutely beautiful to this strange sequence where the viewer can tell the animators are trying their hardest to make it look majestic as it enters the atmosphere. But I couldn't even tell it was a comment at the start and only knew at the end because of my incredible use of context clues, so that scene could use a rework. The environments look amazing, every scene of nature was beautiful. The town Inomori is really pretty, like seriously, why does this girl want to leave? It seems like a pretty awesome place to live. And the character designs didn't make me want to throw up like some other shows. Look, I know it's shallow, but the main thing that's holding me back from watching Your Lie in April is the character designs. I mean, just look at this, like, why? But back on topic, characters are very distinct, pleasant look that shows off their personality. In addition to this, the movements are very sharp and clean, and surprisingly enough, it's the same with the background characters, which is a rare sight in most animes. You could definitely tell the animators had fun here, and it makes for a very visually satisfying watching experience. Now on to the score. So one thing funny about that is that when watching this movie, I heard this melody. So I immediately paused the movie and checked my playlist, and sure enough, song was there. So you want some proof the score slaps? I'd apparently been listening to the soundtrack of this movie for over a month without realizing it. Don't ask why I never saw this on the song cover, just ignore that. So, needless to say, the lyrical songs in this movie slap. The straight, non-lyrical background songs, however, are just decent at best. Look, I should probably stop talking about these types of songs in my reviews because unless one is really, really strong, I just kinda tune them out. Okay, so y'all know the ending song, how it plays in English, right? Well, that caught me completely off guard, and it took me a second to allow for my amazing English-speaking brain to comprehend what was being said, but argue about this in the comments, but is it just me, or did he say shitting tears? Here, listen.
Looking up at the sky after shedding a stream of tears.
Am I wrong? Also, I'm not watching dub. What do I look like, a buffoon? So that gave me a chuckle. Speaking of chuckles, holy shit-a-moly, guys, this is a funny movie. Its comedy is different than what you would expect from a comedy. It has very few one-liner jokes, if any, and even less incredible ones like this that just knock it out of the park.
私
私僕俺
But these are far and few between. Also, that was just my favorite, so I had to share it. I won't show all the jokes as to not ruin the movie, but this movie has mastered something that a lot of other shows, anime or not, mess up. The art of cringe comedy. Now, what do I mean by that? According to the dictionary, cringe comedy is defined as a specific genre of comedy that derives humor from social awkwardness. In this movie, there are many scenes that you know what's happening, it being quite unfortunate for the characters. Yet even as you start dreading it, you can't look away. This type of comedy shines basically the whole first half. Second half is almost entirely emotional with no jokes, but we'll get back to that. Key moments of cringe comedy done right are the skirt scene, the wake-up scene, the school scenes, and basically whenever they're in the wrong bodies, or telling others about switching bodies. I guess a good summary of this section would be the cringe of the two main characters' interactions with others on the topic of body switching is funny because they look like total buffoons. The pacing and structure of this movie is decent. The main problems I saw were that the body switching montage was rushed. That scene was really funny and I wish more of the movie was focused on this section, or this idea in general. And the time after Taki's quest for Mitsuha dragged on a little too long. In addition, the climax dragged on a little, but that wasn't as much a problem as it was pretty entertaining. I enjoyed it, but eventually I was like, alright, wrap it up, let's get to the conclusion. I have the same sentiment for the time after they escaped the meteor to the final line. Like, y'all saw each other enough times, just go talk to each other, it's taking forever. The plot is, it's complicated and sadly not in a good way. It's complicated in a way that when they throw twists at you, they don't make much sense, if any. And this movie fails a lot to establish things before they're introduced later. Like, a competent movie would have very subtle clues that Mitsuha's body is 3 years earlier, but this movie doesn't allude to it at all. There's a saying, if you have a gun in the third act, establish it in the first. And this is why the twists in I Want to Eat Your Pancreas work. Because even the knife used is established at the beginning of a movie, so it's believable. Here the twists surprise you, and not in a good way. They surprise you because there's no way to predict them. Speaking of predicting, boy, this movie seemed to fly off the rails plot-wise and did a full 180 with its tone. What do I mean? Well, buckle up while I fail to explain this. So originally I thought that it would be a funny little comedy about them finding each other and learning to love each other while switching bodies or something like that, because up until the montage, that's the tone the movie was giving off. I also thought the meteor was causing the switching for reasons because, look, it's not a stylistic choice to have a big-ass meteor in the sky. Then out of nowhere they stop and the movie becomes a little sadder with no jokes as Taki looks for Mitsuha, which I was like, okay, writers are just planning for them to meet in person and have a cute come-together scene. Then they talk about the town being destroyed, and I was just like, you lost me. Like I said, there's no prompting, no clues, or anything. Just the movie going, oh, by the way, the town's destroyed, that girl's in the past. And I was so confused. I had no idea where the plot was going from this point on, which would be a good thing, right? That's what you want a movie to do. Well, no, not exactly, because this wasn't a deep, hard-to-predict story. It was just confusing because of the shortcomings of the writers. Good way to describe it is the confusion wasn't my fault because I had nothing to work with, especially with all the paradoxes that continue to pop up as timelines get even more scuffed. I mean, for God's sake, Mitsuha is like Schrodinger's cat, both being dead and alive at one point. This is a big problem I have with time travel when done incorrectly, so I think the writers should have simplified the story. Heck, they even do this in the movie with the side plot of warning the town. This segment is much stronger than most of the second half because it blocks out the noise and lets me focus on the task at hand. Other things is that the characters are very well written. The main cast is incredible, besides Miki. She didn't really serve a purpose besides clock convenience. But the writers did a good job making them people because despite the problems and the confusion in the plot, when it came to the big emotional scenes, I could forget about that and focus on these really likable protagonists. Side note, why did Mitsuha break the emotional scene with the unfunny pervert joke? It could have been a funny joke with proper timing and a matching tone of the previous scene. But it was ruined by cutting into the intense raw emotion in the scene that I was really getting into. So, final thoughts. Is this a bad movie? No, not at all. Though the plot is pretty bad for the second half, it still has some good moments and a charming side quest to save the town, in addition to a very pleasing scene on the top of the mountain, besides the unfunny joke. And the comedy and charm of the first half with the body switching and cringe humor makes this movie great. It's no life-changing movie, not as good as I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, so I give it a modest 6 out of 10. It's worth at least one watch, even if you only make it halfway.
そしたらね二人でどんな言葉を放とう消えることない約束